Hello all, I am Vinu C. James, pursuing first semester MA program at IASC Thrissur. Today, I am going to discuss about a book review of famous philosopher Ivan Illich's De-Schooling Society. It is an unfortunate reality that 9 out of 10 teachers and educationists have neither heard of Ivan Illich nor read his book De-Schooling Society, published in 1971. This radical and profound book is a magnificently cerebral exposition on the shortcomings of schools and offers a critical discourse on institutionalized education in modern economies. The book is controversial, subversive, intellectual, and a tour de force in every sense. The first chapter, Why We Must De-establish School, is a ferocious indictment of traditional educational institutions that seek to promote the status quo and convince us that we need a society as it is today. One of the many points Illich makes is that more education does not necessarily translate into more good. Unfortunately, most, if not all, modern economists have reached a point where school is thought of as something that is indispensable. We have raised generations of people to believe that without schools and conventional education, society will collapse. Illich makes a compelling case to de-school society, wean our citizens off institutionalized, factory-style, pointless education and start thinking of alternatives. We need to see schools as a manifestation of a ritual, and like most rituals, it is blind and based on tradition. School is now a modern day religion that offers the futile promise of easy salvation. Institutional wisdom tells us that children need school. Institutional wisdom tells us that children learn in school. But this institutional wisdom is itself the product of schools because sound common sense tells us that only children can be taught in school. Only by segregating human beings in the category of childhood could we ever get them to submit to the authority of a school teacher. Illich was an astro-creation priest but also philosopher and critic of various institutions of Western culture. The Guardian describes him as a polymath and polemicist whose greatest contribution was an archaeologist of ideas rather than an ideologue. His charisma, spirituality, brilliance and sincerity were obvious to everyone who knew him, as was his stern, nonsense demeanor. His controversial views on education, society, the law, medicine and economics brought him into conflict not just with experts of all strips but with the powerful Roman Catholic Church as well. However, experts were often the target of Illich's piercing insight and critical review. In De-Schooling Society, Illich says, a major illusion on which the school system rests is that most learning is the result of teaching. Teaching, it is true, may contribute to certain kinds of learning under certain circumstances, but most people acquire most of their knowledge outside school and in school only insofar as a school in a few rich countries has become their place of confinement during an increasing part of their lives. He goes on to drive the point that it is patently false that learning is the result of teaching. On the contrary, the teacher in a modern school performs three roles: as custodian of society's rituals, as therapist, and as preacher. Of course, these roles are more outdated than ever today in an age of ubiquitous information and smartphones. Illich was prescient in more ways than one. He also points out school appropriates the money, the men and goodwill available for education and in addition discourages other institutions from assuming educational tasks. Work, leisure, politics, city living and even family life depend on schools for the habits and knowledge they presuppose instead of becoming themselves the means of education. Illich's views are more relevant today than ever before. What we have at the moment are superficial band-aids on the surface of a profoundly traumatic wound on the flesh of human society. Children are being betrayed and the future of our species is up for grabs. There is a lot of talk of change, but there is a very little sense of urgency. What is desperately required is to empty the education bucket, overhaul the system, and take bold, dramatic, and drastic steps. We have been indoctrinated to believe the notion that only schools can offer education and that skills and knowledge acquisition are only reliable if it is done formally in a traditional school. In the words of Ken Robinson, schools kill creativity, and in the words of Ivan Illich, schools pervert the natural inclination to learn. Last but not least, Tony Wagner, the innovation expert in residence at Harvard and best-selling author, points out that what we need is not mere education, but a different kind of education. For the sake of our children and for the future of our species, we have to start looking for alternatives to schools to educate our kids. Thank you.